This is part 2 episode 146. Han Yu declared, "Don't put it that way, Kia. Yuan was right just before. Resurrecting Captain is not solely your responsibility. Ever since our demon hunt squad was founded, how much did Captain sacrifice for us? Although we did not mention it a lot, everything was engraved deep inside our hearts. If we hadn't had Captain, maybe we would already have gotten wiped out long before. And how could we still be here on this day? How could we have gained the honor of getting called a titled Demon Hunt Squad? Following Captain in demon territory gave us worth. Now that Captain has died in battle, even paying the cost of each of our lives is worth it if we can bring Captain back to life. This is what every one of us thinks. Without Captain, bright glimmer of hope doesn't have its soul. We need him to come back to life and keep leading us, to go create even more miracles, to guide us in vanquishing demonkind. Even the demon god emperor, moon demon god, and star demon god had to acknowledge that Captain's existence threatened all demonkind's survival, making Captain's life even more important than all of ours added up altogether. Resurrecting Captain is necessary to see the dawn of the Alliance's victory. No matter what the cost is, it will be worth it." Lin Xin nodded. Han Yu is right. As long as Captain is resurrected, I am willing to pay any cost. We have finally passed the trials on this 5th floor, but we will have to face even greater challenges next. The opponents will be even stronger, but only the 3 of us are left now. Kia, when it comes to it, you mustn't stop us no matter what Han Yu and I will have to do. Looking at Lin Xin and Han Yu standing in front of her, Kia's eyes were firm and resolute, already unstoppable by mere words. Having come so far, they had to keep going forward, otherwise their comrades' sacrifices would have come to naught. Unbinding Long Houchen's body from her back, and cautiously placing it onto the ground, Kia didn't argue any longer with Lin Xin and Han Yu. At this point, she could only stay strong. As Long Houchen's temporary replacement as captain, she had a lot more responsibilities. Han Yu and Lin Xin sat across Kia's side. Petting the eternal melody full of warmth, she declared, "The Tower of Eternity has 7 floors in all. When we originally first came, Houchen had been offered Elux's heritage. At that time, he said that his heritage was on the 7th floor of the Tower of Eternity, but that he had a plethora of trials to pass through before he would be able to meet him. 10 of the 12 holy guards have already showed up before us, so there are only 2 last ones left now, all of whom will inevitably appear in the next floor. According to the previous disposition, it will very possibly be on the 6th floor that they will appear. In other words, the trials on the 6th floor will most likely be our last ones." Han Yu nodded. "It is highly probable. The trials of the 5th floor have all confronted us with domain-wielding powerhouses of the 9th step, and the 6th floor will go 1 step further. It wouldn't be justified for the 7th floors to also contain trials. If it really needed to be so strong, what point would there be to fight over a heritage?" Lin Xin asked, "But what could this trial on the 6th floor taking it 1 step further be? Based on our previous encounters, we should have to meet a darkness elemental mage and a holy light-wielding warrior. Could it be that these 2 domain-wielding powerhouses of the 9th step will appear together?" From these words, the 3 of them had looks of total shock. In fact, one must know that of the 6 great elements, light and darkness were originally placed above the 4 natural elements. Therefore wielders of light and darkness will usually be a bit more powerful than wielders of the 4 natural elements. Even the appearance of only one of these would already be a considerable challenge to them, much less 2 of them coming together. Han Yu furrowed his brows. They should not be coming together, right? That would be just too difficult to handle. In contrast, Kia shook her head. "I hope that they can appear together." "Why?" Han Yu and Lin Xin asked almost at once. Kia replied, "That's because this is the only way we can pass through this 6th floor. The trials of the Tower of Eternity all gradually get harder, but the last trial is always bound to be much harder than all the previous ones. When we reach the 6th floor, in the case where we only encounter light and darkness elemental powerhouses alone, the increase in difficulty won't differ too much from previously, at least not qualitatively. But only if they appear together will the increase of difficulty make it plausible as the last trial of the Tower of Eternity. Although such a trial will be much more difficult to face, at least it's better than afterwards facing a totally unknown other trial." Han Yu murmured, "Actually, it isn't necessarily a bad thing for light and darkness to appear alongside each other." "Not a bad thing. That's 2 domain-wielding powerhouses." Lin Xin spoke in incomprehension. Han Yu replied, "But don't forget that out of all 6 great elements, light and darkness are the most conflicting. Tell me, how can light and darkness complement each other? And most of all, let's speak about domains. Domain are abilities of large scale, acting on a region. If domains of light and darkness appear together, they can only interfere with each other. How could a match even be considered? Maybe, if they appear together, they won't necessarily make use of domains, which will make it a bit easier for us to respond. Kia didn't utter a word, pondering deeply. She was strenuously trying to make guesses, but was still unable to tell what the sixth floor trial could be. Hanyu looked at Kia. Anyway, how about letting me try out? Kia rejected with haste, out of the question. No matter what trials are awaiting us in the sixth floor, the examinee will be exceedingly powerful. And without sufficient strength, they surely won't even go all out, so you won't be able to scout out anything. We have only one chance, to deal with it all in one spurt, and pass through at once. Let's recover our strength at once. This time, none of you is to go against me. I am the only one who can possibly get through. Now formulating more guesses would be of no use. Only by facing it for real would they be able to understand the last floor's challenges. The three of them sat cross-legged, rapidly entering a meditative state to recover their spiritual energy. Despite the times of pause between the uses, taking co-joined spiritual pills in such quick succession still caused severe overdraft on their bodies. They were on the verge of facing the sixth floor, which would very possibly be the very last one. This time, Kia didn't rush, and made sure they recovered their whole capabilities before continuing. In the sky, the shadow of death was still floating, calmly standing there, and dispersing a faintly discernible grey radiance. Just like a breathing human, every pulse of the aura on it caused the air in the Tower of Eternity to fluctuate slightly. Kia entered the state of cultivation completely. After passing through the previous hurdles, her spirit and strength gradually completed perfect harmonization, after having just recovered her memories. At the same time, these few hard battles caused great liberation of her strength, which gained an important increase. At the time she was back to opening her eyes, even she didn't know how much time had passed. Lin Xin and Han Yu had opened their both eyes long ago, and all members of Bright Glimmer of Hope were reunited to her side. Chen Yinga was resting against Yang Wenjiao's bosom, Duanyi supported Sima Xian on his other side, and the pale Wang Yuan and Zhong Fangfang were already awake. Although none of it could be told from their expressions, their breath was much, much weaker than before. Not even fluctuations of spiritual energy could be perceived coming out from them. You all came. Looking at the comrades in front of her, Kia couldn't help but purse up her lips. Kia, we will succeed at any cost. We will climb to the sixth floor with you at any cost, and do our best for you. Chen Yinga's voice was still very weak, but she spoke with determination. The others nodded just like her. Maybe they were already unable to do any more to prepare the way for Kia, but they were willing to come even if it would be only for the sake of encouraging Kia in the following battle. Kia stood up slowly, giving a look at the Long Houchen lying down peacefully. She did not keep thanking them, because no words would be enough to express her gratitude. Having comrades such as you all is really great. Then let's ascend this sixth floor together. Saying that, she held Long Houchen, but this time, didn't attach him to her body using the chain. Turning back, she advanced toward the pillar of light that had already appeared long before. The shadow of death in the sky followed ahead, and the instant Kia disappeared in the pillar of light, it turned into streaks of light, disappearing inside the pillar as well. Everyone from Bright Glimmer of Hope lent their arms to support each other, resolutely entering the pillar of light. Streaks of radiant light shone, bringing them to the top floors of the Tower of Eternity. Sixth floor of the Tower of Eternity. After everyone passed through the teleporting gate, they all unconsciously stared at the same direction. This floor was different from the fifth floor, arranged around lines radiating from the center. The whole sixth floor of the Tower of Eternity was separated completely into two worlds. On the left, everything was pitch black, and on the right was a golden holy illumination. Light and darkness were separated clearly, and at their center was an expanse of white energy. Kia cautiously placed Long Houchen on the ground, and turned toward her comrades. Please take care of him, guys. Han Yu, Lin Xin, I'll need to borrow your powers. Having Long Houchen on her back would make it hard for her to display the full extent of her strength. Yes. Lin Xin and Han Yu strode forward simultaneously, taking a co-joined spiritual pill each. Their movements were stopped by Kia. It's not about taking the co-joined spiritual pills. I want to borrow your strengths through the spiritual stove of samsara. You will lose all your spiritual energy in the process, and will need 3 months to recover it. In a bit, please be completely relaxed. That's the only way I can assimilate your spiritual energies. The two of them were startled, so Kia still had such a method. From behind, the others all watched Kia attentively, as well as Long Houchen. The situation in the 6th floor was telling them that they were undoubtedly on the verge of facing light and darkness alongside each other. Would Kia truly be able to pass through this trial? No one knew if Kia would be able to make it. They were all praying silently deep in their hearts. Kia, we are there too. Our spiritual energy is yours. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi stood up completely. They were the only two left with some spiritual energy of the group aside from Han Yu and Lin Xin. Kia didn't act modestly and nodded, all right. The four of them formed a row, with Kia standing in the front slowly lifting the sickle of the god of death in her hand. Above her head, the shadow of death descended slightly. An ice-cold murderous spirit filled the air, but right now, this murderous spirit wasn't invasive, but had the form of a kind of extraordinary energy. The Tower of Eternity was filled with a very extensive breath of death. But this instant, it looked like the breath of death had suddenly disappeared at once and Kia's shadow of death became glittering. The area on Kia's chest glowed. It was not the light of the eternal melody, but a grey radiance forming grey halos hovering around her chest. The sickle of the god of death pointed forward and aimed first at Han Yu. The sharp edge was pushed against Han Yu's chest, causing the latter to feel a cold chill. He felt his whole body going cold, as an unsurpassed might surged out in the midst of that icy cold. The internal spiritual energy in his body felt like gushing out, turning into groups of white halations heading through Kia with the sickle of the god of death as extension. Just like Kia had instructed, Han Yu didn't resist and completely loosened his body, allowing Kia to absorb it all. In just a moment, his over 10,000 supply of spiritual energy was reduced to naught. But as the effect of the absorption had yet to finish, Han Yu activated the effects of his spiritual stove of light blessings, and declared, Kia, absorb from the others first. My spiritual stove's effects should improve your absorption further. Kia nodded silently, and the sickle of the god of death next landed onto Lin Xin. The spiritual stove of light blessings encompassed Lin Xin, Duan Yi and Yang Wenjiao in its range of effects, greatly accelerating their spiritual energy recovery. The sickle of the god of death kept flickering with deep coldness, as it absorbed every drop of the four's spiritual energies. At the start, the four were originally standing, but as their spiritual energy was greatly diminishing, they had no choice but to sit down because of the feelings of weakness. Time passed second after second, and in the time needed to have a meal, Kia obtained over 100,000 spiritual energy from these four. This was thanks to the spiritual stove of light blessings. Without it, it would already be pretty good for Kia to get 60,000 from these guys. Absorbing 100,000 spiritual energy caused Kia's whole body to release fluctuations of spiritual energy. Thin grey streams of air fluctuated lightly around her body. Everyone could totally feel the imposing ice cold, which the four who had gotten their spiritual energy absorbed had felt. The shadow of death in the sky became more and more distinct. The still illusory-looking face aside, every wrinkle on its grey armor became clear to view. Kia slowly bowed the sickle of the god of death towards her comrades, showing her resolve in the depths of her gaze. All demon hunters from Bright Glimmer of Hope were aware of her thoughts. The resolute look she had gave off an indescribable feeling of deathly stillness. She had the determination to achieve a short kill in this battle. Right now, none of them could stop Kia, and as they also knew, none of them would even be capable of it. Taking deep breaths, Kia placed her sickle of the god of death onto the ground. Immediately, the grey radiance surrounding her body formed into a grey lump spiraling around her. As a grey barrier was formed on her body, both Kia's feet shot out abruptly. If one absolutely had to describe the feeling she gave off, then nothingness would be very fitting. Even the comrades behind her felt that she seemed incorporeal. Layer upon layer of spiritual energy kept gushing out, and she was overflowing with murderous spirit, as she quickly brandished the sickle of the god of death. A tyrannical grey ray was clearly visible, drilling forward and aiming at the junction, in the midst of the world of light and darkness. At the same time Kia made this move, in the golden and dark opposite worlds appeared two lights and shadows. This instant, everyone felt like the sun and moon had appeared simultaneously in this 6th floor. Right, this was the feeling of the sun that symbolizes the day and the moon that symbolizes the night. These were two identically shaped skeletons, a golden skeleton in armor and a black skeleton in a gown. Just like Kia had anticipated, these last two skeletons had appeared together. And, from the looks of this 6th floor, that white energy in the center seemed to make it so that their respective domains wouldn't counteract each other. Bang. A murderous gray, almost corporeal spirit abruptly attacked the white barrier in the middle, causing the sixth floor's spatial limits to sway slightly. That thin-looking barrier was actually incomparably tough and durable. Even such an intense and sharp corporeal murderous spirit was unable to cause any damage whatsoever. Chaos attribute and spatial attributes. Chen Ying'er and Wang Yuanyuan blurted out almost simultaneously. Their eyesight having grown stronger and stronger with their strength, they were able to perceive traces of the attributes they were pretty knowledgeable with. The mixture of chaos and space formed this separating barrier. The two skeletons moved together. The bright warrior was growing an immense pair of golden wings, and its body turned into a stream of light rushing straight at Kia. This ability seemed quite close to Long Houchen's lightspeed flash, but even faster. The instant of its release, the place where the skeleton used to stand glittered with the shine of sunlight, and a dense light essence giving off a sticky vibe flared out a discharge of radiant light. On the other side, the darkness mage lifted up its staff, and behind it appeared a dark purple crescent half-moon, from which a thick darkness element arose. Light and darkness had absolutely no way to harmonize, but the instant these two powerhouses made a move, Kia suddenly became stagnant in the midst of light and darkness. In other words, the barrier formed of chaos and space was right on her body, and right now, she was being attacked by darkness from the left and light from the right. Her body was locked in the path of the two powerhouses' attacks. Indeed, light and dark had no way to assimilate each other, but under this clever setup, Kia was restricted to the central spot of the sixth floor. Being aimed at simultaneously by the powerful offenses from the light and dark elemental domains, she was pulled into the center of the room in a straight line. The restrictions inflicted by light and darkness pushed her into desperate straits at once. The expressions on the team's face took a sharp turn. The gap in difficulty between the fifth and sixth floors was just excessive. They originally believed that the trials on the fifth floor were already an excessive challenge, having two powerhouses of space making use of domains. But in this trial, Kia was facing not only two powerhouses, but also attacks formed of repulsive power. Light and darkness opposed each other terrifyingly, making it so that in case these two elements impacted her body at the same time, the mutual repulsion would be sufficient to crush her body completely. Even in such desperate straits, Kia did not panic. Raising the sickle of the god of death in her hand, her whole body was in a state of great serenity. Striding once, her body moved and shot up in straight line. This instant, Kia's speed suddenly reached an indescribable level of terrifyingness, actually even exceeding that light warrior wielding its domain's power. In a flash, she crossed ways with the light warrior and even crossed the darkness mage's path without launching an attack. What kind of technique was that? One could only see a grey shadow moving at a speed that even an assassin of the ninth step wouldn't necessarily attain. Following Kia's frontal charge, that shadow of death that had kept floating so far finally landed to the ground. Following her like an afterimage, it finally blended into Kia's body after a short time of approach. A god's descent. In the minds of all Bright Glimmer of Hope's members appeared that same reaction. But, they had yet to understand the nature of this god's descent that Kia had employed. That shadow of death had appeared long before, on the battle of the third floor, and had taken part in the previous battle only for a short moment. But Kia hadn't yet utilized it, while still maintaining it. It was a wonder how a god's descent could be maintained and fermented for such a long time. All grey, an endless grey. Kia's whole body sank in a pool of grey, and the instant that shadow of death suffused her body, the latter suddenly gained a slender feel. The spiritual wings on her back shrank, as ripples of grey color circulated all around her body. As Kia slowly turned back, the colors of her eyes changed, turning grey instead of black, tinted with a sharp white. A white color generally gave off a cleansing feeling, but the white in Kia's eyes seemed filled with inexhaustible magic power. The instant she turned back, the black mage and light warrior's movements became dull, not even launching their attacks immediately. A grey barrier spread out from Kia, and a fantastic scene followed. The central area formed of chaos and space was unable to breach through this grey barrier, as it looked like Kia had embedded a huge gem in that area just then. This was already beyond astonishing. The slaughter intent coming out from her body disappeared at once, giving way only to deathly cold stillness, but this deathly stillness was not an aura of death either. Her long skirt drifting even without any wind, the white glow in Kia's eyes grew even further in intensity. 7 Arts of the God of Death, Death in Childhood. Caia made a move, and the instant the sickle of the God of Death was launched, it was already glinting in a clear white color. This strike was not aimed at any opponent in the sidelines, but right into the central area. Right, splitting this area was her only chance, otherwise the pincer attack of the great domains of light and darkness elements would make her defeat the only possible conclusion. The dark mage waved his staff forward, and from it, a pitch-black ray took shape. In the meantime, a half-moon shape behind him drifted forward, and its deep purple radiance chased after that black ray. The light warrior didn't immediately launch an assault. The heavy sword in his hand was pointed to the sky, releasing a bright golden brilliance of incomparable intensity. In a flash of gold, another projectile like that purple half-moon was shot at Kia. In an ear-piercing splitting sound, the white barrier shattered, and the powers of darkness and light instantly mixed together in their midst. However, right as these two totally opposite powers clashed, the rays of the purple moon and the golden halo clashed against Kia head-on. The white ray released by the dark mage was split by Kia's sickle of the god of death, but slightly slowed down her movements. The next instant, the purple moon and golden ray began clashing at once. But, mysteriously, as these two domains' powers clashed, the whole space suddenly came to a standstill. The area having lost its central nucleus, the light and darkness, which should have clashed violently, came to a sudden stop, and then happened to join each other instead of colliding. Purple-black and golden-yellow intertwined with each other, forming a head-sized circular yin-yang symbol. Seeing that, everyone from Bright Glimmer of Hope couldn't help but feel a chill of stupefaction. A harmonization between light and darkness, a dual-element mixed magic. They had seen mixed magic before, but the pure mixture of light and darkness was something they had never expected to see. Chen Ying's elemental cage mixed the 6 elements to produce a formidable power, but it made use of some tricks. For instance, water and fire, as well as light and darkness, had to be divided by the other elements, preventing them from coming into contact. Otherwise she surely would have no way to control it. But what was just happening right before their eyes? A magic combining light and darkness, combining the light elemental and darkness elemental domains. To say nothing of that situation, there was no record of anything similar even in all the records left by humankind. That was a crazy mixture of light and darkness, and it gave rise to such a terrifying might. Could Kia block it? Even the demon god emperor would be surprised, seeing such a thing. The difficulty of this 6th floor went way beyond their expectations. These two great holy guards were actually able to achieve such combinatorial magic. How could they win? The instant that ball of light had appeared, the light and darkness elements on its two sides gathered extremely naturally. Those souls of powerhouses in the two skeletons' eyes pulsed violently, and the whole Tower of Eternity shook due to this mixture. If such a combinatorial magic should detonate, there would be no certainty that even the Tower of Eternity could bear it. That was the mixture between two domains of the 9th step, a combination of explosiveness. Right at this instant, Kia launched her second attack. The white light in her vanished as she seemed to become entirely transparent, like a pure white sculpture. The sickle of the god of death pointed to the front and Kia's body slid forward quietly, before rushing to the ball of light of combined light and darkness. A bizarre white light extended from her sickle of the god of death in the shape of a thread, which nimbly encircled that ball of light. Shockingly, that white thread slowly cut through the midst of that ball of light combining light and darkness, stripping all the spiritual energy contained inside. The mixture of light and darkness came to a stop, and the soul fires in the skeleton's eyes pulsed once again, taking the same action of launching another attack. That domain combination was originally their most powerful attack. If not for the fear that Kia had aroused in them with the powerful purifying force of death in childhood, destroying the barrier between light and darkness, they would not be so harsh as to show this move. But Kia's second attack shocked them once again. Those somewhat thin white threads were even more frightening than the previous instance of death in childhood, as that was a purifying force no element had a chance to resist. Combining light and darkness is easier said than done. An extraordinary balance needed to be achieved, so that they would neither counteract nor swallow each other. This was something extremely hard to control, and needed all the elemental forces composing it to reach a state of solidity. When pierced by those white threads, how could this state of balance be maintained? The portions colored golden and purplish-black instantly showed traces of instability, looking about to burst. The two skeletons guarding these floors were without doubt the number 1 and number 2 of the 12 holy guards. As the most powerful beings out of all the holy guards, they were the left and right arms of the slumbering calamity Elux. Their mastery of light and darkness had already reached the peak level. Seeing the ball of light about to burst, the two powerhouses simultaneously made the same move. The first holy guard, the holy warrior, swept his heavy sword in a circular motion, tracing a circle, and the second holy guard made the same motion with his staff. Due to the ravaging white threads, the ball of light took only an instant to be routed, with light essence and darkness essence gushing out from the two sides at once, rapidly melting toward the light warrior and darkness mage. All the golden and black essence in the air returned to their respective directions. Upon seeing this scene, the mage of this group, Lin Xin, shivered unconsciously. This was absolutely not doable with just 200,000 spiritual energy. A mage able to transfer his or her thoughts to forcefully call back his elemental magic, what level of control was that? These two holy guards not only had an ultra-high control over magic power, but also a flawless grasp of their own domain. This level of strength was just too terrifying. Their spiritual energy ought to have attained at least 300,000. Even with lacking equipment, they were strong enough to match some demon gods in the top 36th ranks, making full use of their demon god transformation. And Kia was facing off against two such powerhouses by herself. What a pressure. Even if Long Houchen was resurrected, he might not even necessarily win such a match. However, the previous courses of action confirmed some of Lin Xin's thoughts. These first and second holy guards were indeed unwilling to let their spiritual energy collide. The rupture of the state of fusion would cause light and darkness to corrode each other, and therefore greatly affect their ability. Lin Xin's only point of curiosity was, how could these light and darkness users show such a high level of mutual understanding? Powerhouses of the light and darkness elements should normally be mutually repulsed by each other. Light and darkness rapidly retracted in the same direction, causing an eye-catching scene to follow in the 6th floor of the Tower of Eternity. However, the two great holy guards clearly hadn't such an easy time of regaining their own domains by these means. They had to sustain considerable backlashes from their domains. Two groans were heard at the same time. Drawing back, the fluctuations of spiritual energy they released became very frantic. Facing two such great powerhouses wielding light and darkness combinatorial magic, Kia not only did not suffer loss, but even had the advantage. If this was not happening right before their eyes, who would dare believe that? Kia had her eyes shut, the glow in them disappeared at once. Second of the 7 arts of the god of death, death in cleansing. All the white surrounding Kia, including the white filling her eyes, stemmed from the god of death's purifying power. Kia's god's descent was already in use from the start of the 3rd floor, in the shape of that shadow of death. In another place, Kia could only deploy her death god's descent for 5 minutes at most, but this Tower of Eternity was not the same. Kia had gained some understanding as early as the first time she followed Long Houchen there. This comprehension stemmed from the death energy inside the Tower of Eternity. The Tower of Eternity was the strongest divine tool of the Holy Necromancer, slumbering calamity Elux, absorbing souls to raise its power. So who could imagine how much death energy came out from it? And what's the god of death? That's the divinity in control of death itself. Not a deathbringer, but a death purifier. Through the cleansing of death, he could turn all the death energy into his own power. That's the power of the god of death. Part 2 end here.